Now, back in the old days, when they were, writing the dictionary definition of the word woman, they'd have had no clue how controversial the definition would become in the future. Currently, the definition of woman, adult, human, female, like me, is causing quite a stir. Even the leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, was asked, what is wrong with this phrase, woman, adult, human, female? He couldn't give a definitive answer. Perhaps because, frankly, there's nothing wrong with it. Now, my next guest has immortalised the phrase by projecting it on buildings, writing it on T-shirts and on stickers that are cropping up all over the country and, indeed, the globe. She is women's rights campaigner and the founder of Standing for Women, Kellie-Jay Keen. Kellie, I do not understand the madness of the world when all of a sudden 50% of the population who are born with a cervix are finding that they can't even identify or speak the name of their biological sex because somehow that is now politically incorrect. Well, how did we get to this madness?
Well, we got there quite swiftly, really, because I think the trans rights activists sort of try to frame trans rights as something different to the rest of human rights, which is they want to enable men to go into women's spaces. And so way back in 2018, I noticed that the thing that we were losing in this debate, the way that our rights were being given away, was to eradicate the word woman to mean adult human female. So I put it up on a billboard in Liverpool during the Labour Party conference, and it was removed for hate speech. So that was quite a chilling episode where I realised that what was now happening is that commercial interests felt it was more viable to listen to a very vocal minority of men, as opposed to being in the best interest of women. And commercial enterprises started getting involved. And now we see them everywhere obliterating the word woman.
But how much of a risk is this? Because, I find it tawdry, I find it insulting, I hate it, frankly. It drives me absolutely mad to see the prevalence of this nonsense surrounding just identifying as what I was born, a woman. But surely at the end of the day, it's words, right? And we can decide to just pay no attention. We can ignore the braying mob and go about our lives and call ourselves women and call each other women and just think, we don't have to listen to that. Is it more than that, though?
Yeah, it is. It's now everywhere. So the state's completely involved. I've been interviewed under caution by the police for expressing my views that women don't have male bodies and that men cannot be women, that I think it's wrong to transition children. So yeah, it's really, really quite serious. We've got cervical cancer. They don't use the word woman, whereas prostate cancer definitely uses the word man. We have the police now, because of this sort of peculiar notion that a man can be a subset of woman and be called a trans woman. We now can be searched. Our female bodies can be searched by police. Those police, even if they're men, as long as they call themselves women, they can actually intimately search a female suspect. We've got men in women's prisons. We've got men who are now girl guide leaders and can go away on a residential with small children, with small girls, without telling any parent that there is a man actually going away with their daughters. So it's a really peculiar phenomenon that as soon as you stick this word trans somewhere, common sense, safeguarding and dignity and privacy of women just disappears.
There'll be people out there who say that there's a small cohort of feminists really pushing back against this, but actually in doing so they're exhibiting, the signs of misandry, perhaps, or transphobia is a word we tend to hear a lot. This idea of being a TERF or a serf or whatever it is. But does this actually, are people who are saying that actually we might need to be more tolerant and accept that the world has changed and that the vast majority of people who are trans might tend to be men who identify as women? Or is it that actually this is the thin end of a wedge and before you know it, we're going to lose crucial things such as female-only safe spaces?
Well, let's say the thin end of the wedge is pronoun usage and the word trans woman when it comes specifically to women's rights. And obviously, I acknowledge that there are a lot of women that are trying to opt out of womanhood and call themselves trans men. But if we just stick to the safeguarding, the issue really is men and women's spaces. And what we do know is that male criminal behaviours are no different in the cohort of men that call themselves women or in men. So we're just as much of a risk. I think if we were in a society where there was no sexual harassment, where there was no sexual assault, where 90% of all what they call lesser sexual assaults, which is indecent exposure and spying on women, voyeurism. So if those things had been completely eradicated and women weren't at all at risk of sexual assault or just even being looked at, just even having a male in her space, if that no longer made women feel uncomfortable, I'd say, yeah, let's go for it. Let's pretend biological sex really doesn't matter and doesn't exist. But that hasn't happened. What we do see is that at the same time that boys are now allowed to be called girls and be in girls' changing rooms and toilets in schools, the actual level of sexual harassment has never been higher in schools. And so it's a really funny thing. On the one hand, the same people that talk about Me Too are the same people that talk about trans rights. And I can't quite square that off. We do know, for example, that in Edinburgh Rape Crisis, a man who is legally male is actually running Rape Crisis and calling for a re-education of victims who see him as a man.
Wow. Well, Kellie, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. You're a fantastic woman.